In this chapter, I'm introducing the topic of 3D, three dimensions. Any layer except an audio-only layer can be put into 3D space, meaning that you can position that layer closer to the viewer or farther from the viewer. And this opens up all sorts of possibilities in terms of animations and other behaviors. So just to get a sense of how this works, let's go to Working Files, and we'll go to After Effects Projects, and we'll go down to 1701 3D. We have a couple of comps here. I've got one with 3 boys, and I've got this text over here. We're going to start with the boys. Now you know that stacking order counts. The boy on top here is the boy running, and you can see him on top of the others because the other ones are below him in the stacking order. If I take the boy walking layer and drag it to the top, then he'll be on top and covering up the other guys. So stacking order counts when you're working in this 2D world that you work in most of the time in After Effects. But in the 3D world, stacking order doesn't count at all. It's their position in Z space that counts. Let's just open up the boy walking here and take a look at the transform properties. You see that we have X and Y values for most things here. We've got position, this is the X value, meaning left and right, and the Y value is up and down, like so. You've got scale. I'm going to turn off the link here. We can make them get a little fatter, taller, because that's the X value and the Y value. Let me redo that. Get back to the starting point. There we go. Turn it back on. And you can rotate them. And when you rotate them, you're rotating the entire plane on this anchor point. So you're actually kind of rotating it on the Z-axis. If you think about it, the Z-axis going through his body, if you want to think of it that way. He'll rotate on that Z-axis. But you can't rotate them, let's say, on the Y-axis like this, where you might rotate them kind of sideways. And you can't rotate them on the X-axis, where you might bow towards you, something like that. That just is not part of the 2D world. But what I'm going to do now is make this layer 3D, and you can make any layer 3D except for audio only. The way you do that is simply by clicking on this little checkbox over here underneath that little cube, and now it's a 3D layer. A few things happen. You might notice there's now this kind of funny looking arrow here. There's an X and a Y and a Z controller. You can now control the X value, meaning drag them left and right, Y up and down. And if you kind of hover in the middle there, you'll see Z show up. You can pull it backwards and forwards, basically, like that. So you get that controller instead of just dragging them around. You've got more values down here now. You've got a Z value for the anchor point and for position and for scale. You've got a new thing called orientation, and you've got 3 rotation options now instead of 1. You've got the Z rotation, which you've had all along. That's Z right there. And do that. But you now have an X rotation. Bow, take a bow. Very good. Now you can see the little blue arrow sticking out. That's the Z arrow. Very good. And then turn sideways. Hello. Very nice. I'll undo both of those guys. So you have those additional things. And orientation is very much like what you just saw. There's the Z one that goes like that, and X and Y. They're a little bit different. Orientation is really geared toward positioning something as opposed to animating it. You notice there's no extra X value for orientation, because here you might rotate them several times. Here you just kind of position them. So that's kind of the reason why you have orientation versus rotation. So that's what happens when you turn something into a 3D layer. You get these extra options. Right down below, you get one more set of extra options called material options. And we'll use those when we apply lights and a camera to a 3D world. You don't have to have lights and a camera. But if you do, then the material options come into play, because you can cast shadows, have light pass through things, do really cool things. So we'll leave them for later when we talk about cameras and lights. All right, let's turn on 3D for the other 2 layers here. Click this one there, 3D. Click this one there for 3D. Now suddenly this boy popped in front. Why did that happen? Let's just go back here for a second. The position of the boy walking is 8. The position for the boy in front now, this boy running, is 0. It's 0 by default in terms of the Z position. The Z position is the flat plane, so Y is 8 being covered up by 0. 8 means farther away. The larger the number, the farther away it is from the camera. The smaller the number, the closer to the camera. And you can use negative numbers. So negative numbers, for example, I'll go negative here. I'll just drag him forward. And here he comes. Whoa, negative numbers brings you toward the camera, which may be kind of counterintuitive in terms of how you think of the X, Y, and Z coordinate system, but that's how it works. Negative numbers come to the camera. If I take him back, the other number is positive 8. If he goes to something greater than 8, he'll go behind him. Now the boy here is 0. The boy walking the dog. I'll take his position. I'll increase it so he goes back, way back, or bring him forward like that. Now think of the animation you can do here. You can have them walk along sideways like this, passing in front of each other. Let me take them each individually. Grab the boy walking here, pull him off to the side like that. And the boy running there, we can see him. And what I can do is I can have them pass in front or behind each other. So let's see, the boy walking is 8. The boy running is 100. And the boy walking the dog is minus 179. So let me take the boy walking, who's in the middle of everybody. I'll take him sideways and see what happens. And we'll have him go in front of that boy and behind that guy. And I can have them walking around each other, walking around objects. I can also have them throwing shadows, things like that, with or without lights. I can make shadows using the drop shadow effect, or I can just use lights to throw shadows. So all kinds of ways to work in 3D space. Let's talk about text. This is text in 2D space. You can animate text in 3D space. I'm going to talk about that one a little bit later in this chapter. Let me just show you this text here. Both of these text layers are in 2D space. If I take text 2 and put it on top, you can see text 2. If I take text 1 and put it on top, you can see text 1, like so. I'm going to make them both 3D, all right? And text 1 will still trump text 2. If I change the order, then the order counts because both had 0 in the Z space. I'll open them up by pressing like so, taking a look at their transform properties. And I want to change the position, so I can change the position of one of them. I'll take text 2. If I move text 2 in a positive Z space, it's going to go back. Remember that? Look how far back it can go, make it like almost disappear. It looks like scaling and behaves like scaling, but in fact it has this position in 3D space. I can rotate them. Let's just take a look at rotating them. I'll just close this one down for a second. We'll use the rotate tool on text 1 here. The rotate tool is this guy right up there. It has the keyboard shortcut W. So if I hold down W without letting it go, it temporarily turns on the rotate tool. Sometimes they call it the wotate tool to kind of remind you what it is. Hover over that little arrow there. If I see a circle like that, it's going to rotate the whole thing all different directions like that, almost kind of randomly. But if I hover over one of the points, you see it turns into a letter, and with the rotate tool selected, it'll rotate on just that axis like that. If I take the Z axis here, then we can rotate the Z axis. And hover around the X, turns into X, so I can make it dip forward like that. I'm going to take it on the Y here and rotate it back. And I want it to rotate through text 2. So I'm going to click on text 2. If I see text 2, I see the Z. I can drag the Z and pull it forward. Notice how it's going through text 1. And to get a better look at any kind of 3D work that you're doing, you can change the camera view. We've been working with what's called the active camera view all along here. The active camera view is looking straight on from in front. But you can switch to a different view. If I switch to, let's say, the top, you can see how these guys line up. If I switch to a custom view, that lets you kind of manipulate the view using the camera. Now, this is kind of an artificial camera. You haven't actually added a camera, but you click on this camera tool here. There's keyboard shortcut C. When you're inside the so-called custom view, you can drag it around and kind of get a look at it like that. You can have 3 different custom views. So if you move things around like this, you go to custom view 2 and move things around there, go back to custom view 1, it'll retain what you had before. There you go. Now you're not actually moving the text. You're just moving your point of view. That's all. So if you go back to the active camera view, it'll still have the view that you had when you last left it. So you're not manipulating the view. You're just manipulating how you can perceive it when you're working on it down here. This is confusing for people. They think they're actually moving a camera around or changing the position of these things. They're not. You're just kind of changing your perspective on it to help you work on it. So now that I've done this, I can go back to the selection tool V. Now I can see how this guy's going to work when I move it around like that. It just gives me a different view. I go back to C for camera, and then I can manipulate it again to kind of see how it might look over this direction. But I'm not really changing anything in terms of the values of the text. Back to V again, I can move this guy like that. Click on the other one and move it. So that's the basic way that 3D layers behave. They're still 2-dimensional flat layers, but you can position them, move them around, twist them, turn them in 3D space.